I never thought heartbreak could taste like humiliation. But the day Kweku left me for Adwoa, the daughter of a wealthy real estate tycoon, my world didn't just break, it shattered, publicly. My name is Abena, and I come from a middle-class family in Kumasi. I wasn't poor, but I wasn't rich either. I had dreams, integrity, and a heart that believed too much in love. When I introduced Kweku to my parents, they smiled, not because they liked him, but because they saw what I couldn't. That he was hungry for a lifestyle I couldn't provide. So when he dumped me, saying I wasn't ambitious enough for his future, my parents laughed. Literally. They told me, men like Kweku don't marry girls like you, they use them. And for the first time, I hated my own family more than I hated my ex. But life has its own way of avenging the wounded. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't set traps. I just walked into a hotel one afternoon to apply for a front desk job, and came out with a new identity, a shocking new relationship, and a secret that would turn my entire life, and Kweku's, upside down. Because 2 years later, I would walk into a mansion, dressed in all white, and meet my ex again. But this time, I was his stepmother. I met Nanaqami the day I thought I had nothing left. He was unlike the men I knew, older, yes, but commanding in presence. He owned the hotel I had applied to, yet he took the time to talk to me personally. He'd lost his wife 4 years earlier and told me, I admire women who carry themselves with dignity even in pain. He didn't know I was barely holding it together. Over the next few weeks, I started working as a receptionist in one of his luxury hotels. Nanaqami would often pass by during his rounds and engage me in small talk. He liked my ideas, respected my opinions, and slowly, our casual chats became longer and warmer. One night, after a corporate gala I helped organize, he invited me to a quiet dinner. I almost said no. I still remembered the sting of being left for a rich girl. But Nanaqami wasn't using money to impress me. He was offering companionship, maturity, safety. A few months into dating him, he surprised me with a small bouquet of hibiscus, my favorite flower. You told me once you loved them, he said with a soft smile. It had been a passing comment. Kweku never remembered little things like that. But Nanaqami did. He wasn't a flashy billionaire. He was a cultured, respected man with a quiet kind of power, and his love didn't come with conditions. I never planned to marry him. I was only 27. He was 51. But something about the peace he gave me was worth more than youthful passion. We married in a private ceremony in Cape Coast, with only a few close friends. Then came the day that changed everything. I moved into his estate, a sprawling mansion in East Legon, and began adjusting to life as Mrs. Abena Kwame. 2 weeks later, his daughter returned home from the U.S. Her name? Adwoa. The rich girl Kweku left me for. I stood at the staircase in shock as she walked through the marble foyer, dragging her designer suitcase behind her. She froze. Our eyes locked. What the hell are you doing in my house? She demanded. I smiled. I live here. I'm your father's wife. Adwoa laughed, a disbelieving, cruel laugh. This is a joke, right? A gold digger like you married my dad? Does he even know who you are? I didn't flinch. I told him everything. The color drained from her face. Kweku reappeared weeks later, in an awkward, expensive outfit, trying to impress Nanaqami at a business brunch. He didn't even look at me at first. He was too focused on selling his latest app idea. When he finally realized who I was, and that I was sitting next to Nanaqami as his wife, he coughed, stumbled over his words, and turned pale. Adwoa's eyes darted from him to me. I could feel the storm rising. Later that night, I overheard them fighting. You didn't tell me she was your dad's wife, he hissed. And you didn't tell me she was your ex, she fired back. I wanted to laugh, but all I felt was sadness. You see, the part that hurt the most wasn't that I had become Adwoa's stepmother or Kweku's secret nightmare. It was that when I finally had the upper hand, it didn't feel like victory. The days that followed were awkward, bitter, and suffocating. Adwoa stopped speaking to her father, blaming him for marrying below his class. Kweku began showing up more often, offering fake smiles, proposing business collaborations, pretending the past never existed. But Nanaqami wasn't a fool. He had eyes. He had instincts. One evening, as I watched the sunset from the balcony, he joined me in silence. "I didn't marry you to spite anyone, Abena," he said quietly. "I married you because I saw a woman the world didn't value enough." Tears filled my eyes. "I didn't plan any of this, Nana." "I know," he said. "But maybe it was all meant to be." What Kweku and Adwoa didn't know was that I had already uncovered their secrets, their lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. And while I had no interest in revenge, sometimes the best payback is simply moving forward. But fate wasn't finished with us yet. Because Kweku was planning something dark. And this time, it wasn't just my heart at stake. It was Nanaqami's life, and everything we'd built. 3 months after the brunch, the tension in the Kwame household had thickened into something toxic. Adwoa stopped coming downstairs for family meals. She barely acknowledged her father and treated me like I was invisible, or worse, an infestation. But that didn't bother me. What did, however, was Kweku's sudden closeness to Nanaqami. He had somehow wormed his way into his good graces. Nanaqami had always supported young entrepreneurs, and Kweku's charismatic pitch about a youth-targeted fintech startup seemed to impress him. I tried to warn him, gently. "Be careful with Kweku. He's not who he pretends to be." But my husband only smiled. "You're still holding on to your pain, Abena. Sometimes people change." No. Kweku hadn't changed. He had upgraded his manipulation tactics. And then it happened. I overheard Kweku and Adwoa arguing in the garden, near the orchids. "You promised you'd marry me," she hissed. "You said once I got back from the US, we'd have the perfect life." "I am working on it," he snapped. "But your father keeps trusting his new wife's instincts over mine. She's ruining everything." Adwoa looked panicked. "So what now?" "We push her out," he said coldly. "One way or another." I stepped back from the window, heart thudding. They weren't just jealous. They were dangerous. That night, Nanaqami fell ill after dinner, vomiting uncontrollably and sweating through his clothes. I rushed him to the hospital. The diagnosis? Mild poisoning. He'd eaten a jollof dish I hadn't touched. Adwoa had insisted on serving dinner that night, saying she wanted to rebuild family trust. I sat in that hospital hallway, staring at the white tiles, a cold fury burning in my chest. This wasn't just jealousy. They had tried to kill him. And I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. The girl who had once been mocked, dumped, and laughed at by her own family, was gone. It was time to expose them both, and destroy the empire they were trying to steal. I didn't tell Nanaqami what I'd overheard right away. He was recovering, and I needed evidence, not just suspicion. I hired a private investigator. Discreet, professional, and well-connected. Within a week, I had more than enough. The money trail told the real story. Kweku had been funneling funds from Nana's investment into a shell company owned by Adwoa. And get this, the fake startup idea? It wasn't even original. He'd stolen the pitch deck from another firm in Accra. The plan was simple: bleed Nana dry, make it look like a failed investment, then disappear, together. I had screenshots, voice recordings, and fake account transfers. But I didn't go to Nanaqami just yet. I needed Kweku and Adwoa to believe they had one. Because only when a snake thinks it's safe, does it reveal its full length. So I smiled at breakfast. I played the polite, obedient wife. I let Adwoa mock my table manners and call me a village girl. I waited. Then, at Nanaqami's 52nd birthday dinner, with his closest business partners, family friends, and even a few journalists present, I stood up and tapped my glass. I have a small gift for my husband, I said sweetly. Just a little truth. The lights dimmed. And I played a video. Audio of Kweku and Adwoa applauding. Screenshots of stolen funds. A full breakdown of how they intended to take over Nana's properties. The room went silent. Adwoa dropped her wineglass. Kweku turned ghost white. Nanaqami didn't say a word. He simply stood up, looked at them both, and walked out. The fallout was immediate. Kweku was arrested 2 days later on charges of fraud and attempted murder. The poison had left trace elements in the kitchen utensils, enough to convict. Adwoa was cut off financially. Her father sold her apartment, froze her accounts, and changed his will. She tried to beg, cried on the marble floor, even grabbed my feet once. I didn't mean to hurt him, she sobbed. But I had no more words for her. The girl who had stolen my boyfriend, who laughed when he humiliated me, had destroyed herself trying to keep what was never hers. The house became quiet after that storm. Nanaqami healed slowly, not just from the poisoning, but from the deeper wound, betrayal by his own blood. It was hard for him to accept that the daughter he had raised with love could stoop so low. But he carried his pain with grace. As for me, I didn't feel victorious. I felt vindicated, yes, but not joyful. Revenge isn't as sweet as people think. Sometimes, it leaves behind a bitterness you never expected. My phone buzzed one morning. It was my mother. Abena, we saw the news. What happened to that man and his daughter is all over the radio. I was silent. Then she added, your father says you were right. We should have stood by you when Kweku left. I didn't say I told them so. I didn't remind them how they laughed at my heartbreak. All I said was, I'm doing okay now, Ma. Because I was. For the first time in my life, I truly was. Later that week, I stood at the gate of a local girls' vocational center in Kumasi. I had donated part of my earnings from a new hospitality initiative Nana and I launched. We named it the Second Start Foundation, a place for young women abandoned, broken, or mocked the way I once was. One of the girls, barely 19, approached me with wide eyes. Are you that Mrs. Kwame? I smiled. I'm Abena, I said. I used to be like you. But life changes when you don't give up. She nodded, eyes glistening. And just like that, I knew this was the real win. Not the mansion. Not the stepmother title. Not even the downfall of Kweku or Adwoa. The real win was surviving humiliation without turning bitter. It was building instead of destroying. It was loving myself even when the world tried to convince me I wasn't enough. Sometimes, life doesn't give you the closure you expect. The people who hurt you may never apologize. The ones who laughed may never admit they were wrong. But your healing? Your rise? Your peace? That's your own loudest revenge. So when they mock your struggle, let them laugh. Let them turn away. And then rise, quietly, powerfully, so high, they have no choice but to watch. Because sometimes, the best way to clap back is to become unreachable.